Love can be confusing when someone struggles with emotional closeness. Their feelings often don't look like the romantic gestures people expect. Instead of grand declarations, authentic love appears in subtle shifts, quiet actions, and consistent effort. The signs are easy to miss because they rarely arrive with dramatic words or obvious displays of affection. If you've ever wondered whether an avoidant person is truly falling in love, there are certain changes that reveal far more than promises ever could. These signs show that the emotional walls are beginning to come down and that a deeper connection is becoming too important to ignore. Here are 6 powerful indicators that authentic love is present. One of the most meaningful signs that authentic love is developing is a noticeable change in emotional distance. People who are naturally uncomfortable with vulnerability often create emotional space as a way to protect themselves, keeping thoughts private, avoiding deep emotional conversations, or withdrawing when feelings become intense can feel safer than allowing someone to get too close. Because of this, emotional distance becomes a familiar pattern. However, when genuine love begins to take root, that pattern slowly starts to change. The transformation is rarely dramatic. There's usually no single moment where all barriers disappear. Instead, it happens through small, consistent actions that gradually reveal a growing sense of trust. Conversations begin to move beyond surface-level topics. Personal stories that were once kept hidden start to emerge. Thoughts, fears, dreams, and insecurities become easier to share. Information that was previously guarded begins to be offered willingly because the connection feels increasingly safe and valuable. What makes this change significant is that vulnerability is often one of the hardest things to offer. Opening up emotionally requires the risk of being misunderstood, rejected, or hurt. For someone who has spent a long time protecting personal feelings, choosing to reveal them is not a casual decision. It reflects a deeper level of comfort and trust. The emotional walls that once seemed permanent begin to show small openings, allowing a stronger connection to develop. Another important sign is the willingness to remain present during emotionally charged situations. In the past, difficult conversations may have triggered withdrawal or silence. When authentic love is involved, there is often a greater effort to stay engaged even when emotions feel uncomfortable. Instead of immediately creating distance, there is a growing desire to understand, communicate, and maintain the bond. This doesn't mean every conversation becomes easy, but it does mean the relationship becomes worth the discomfort that vulnerability sometimes brings. You may also notice an increased curiosity about your inner world. Questions become more personal and thoughtful. There is a genuine interest in understanding your experiences, feelings, and perspectives. This level of emotional engagement signals that the connection is moving beyond convenience or attraction and into something much deeper. The relationship starts to feel like a safe place where both people can be fully seen and understood. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of shrinking emotional distance is consistency. Anyone can have a vulnerable moment, but authentic love is often revealed when openness becomes a regular part of the relationship. Over time, trust grows stronger, conversations become richer, and emotional closeness feels less threatening. The gradual reduction of emotional barriers shows that the connection has become important enough to challenge old fears and embrace a deeper level of intimacy. One of the clearest signs that authentic love is developing is when consistency begins to replace unpredictability. In many relationships, uncertainty can create confusion. One day there is warmth, attention, and connection, and the next day there seems to be distance or silence. This inconsistency often leaves people wondering where they stand and whether the relationship truly matters. However, when genuine feelings deepen, a noticeable shift often occurs. Effort becomes more reliable, communication becomes steadier, and the connection starts feeling more secure. Consistency is powerful because it reflects intention. Anyone can show affection when everything feels easy and comfortable. The real test comes during busy schedules, stressful periods, or emotionally challenging moments. Authentic love creates a desire to maintain the relationship even when life becomes complicated. Rather than disappearing whenever pressure arises, there is a greater willingness to stay connected and present. The relationship begins to occupy a meaningful place in everyday life, instead of becoming something that is only prioritized when convenient. This change can appear in many small but important ways. Messages may become more regular. Plans are followed through more often. Promises are taken seriously. There is a growing effort to create stability because the connection has become valuable enough to protect. These actions may seem simple on the surface, but they carry significant meaning. Reliability demonstrates that the relationship is no longer being treated as an uncertain possibility. Instead, it is becoming an important part of life that deserves attention and care. Another important aspect of consistency is emotional availability. While everyone needs personal space from time to time, authentic love often inspires a stronger willingness to remain emotionally engaged. Instead of frequently sending mixed signals, there is greater clarity in actions and behavior. The emotional ups and downs that once created confusion begin to level out. This doesn't mean perfection or constant closeness. It simply means there is a more dependable effort to nurture the connection and keep it healthy. Trust also grows when consistency becomes a regular pattern. Relationships thrive when people know they can depend on each other. Repeated actions build confidence in a way that words alone never can. Over time, dependable behavior creates a sense of safety. Doubt begins to fade because actions consistently reinforce the importance of the relationship. The connection feels more stable, more secure, and more grounded in reality rather than uncertainty. Perhaps the strongest indication of authentic love is that consistency continues even when there is no immediate reward. Effort is not given only during exciting moments or when things are going perfectly. It remains present during ordinary days, difficult conversations, and challenging circumstances. This steady investment shows that the relationship is valued for the long term. When unpredictability gives way to reliability, it often reveals that the connection has moved beyond temporary interest and into something much deeper, stronger, and genuinely meaningful. One of the most revealing signs that authentic love is developing is when future plans begin to naturally include you. This shift may seem subtle at first, but it carries deep emotional significance. When someone is focused primarily on independence, most plans revolve around personal goals, individual experiences, and decisions made without considering another person's role in the future. However, as genuine feelings grow stronger, the way the future is viewed often begins to change. The relationship gradually becomes part of the bigger picture. This change usually doesn't appear through grand announcements or dramatic promises. Instead, it shows up in everyday conversations. Future events are discussed with the assumption that you will be there. Upcoming holidays, special occasions, personal goals, and long-term aspirations begin to include your presence. These moments may seem small, but they reveal an important shift in perspective. Rather than viewing life as a completely separate journey, there is an increasing comfort with imagining a shared path. What makes this sign so meaningful is that future planning requires emotional investment. It involves seeing value in maintaining the connection over time. When someone starts thinking beyond the present moment and naturally includes another person in those thoughts, it often indicates that the relationship has become emotionally significant. The connection is no longer limited to current feelings or temporary enjoyment. It begins to represent something that is expected and desired in the future. You may notice this through casual comments about events months away. There might be discussions about places to visit together, experiences to share, or goals that could be achieved as a team. These conversations often happen naturally rather than being forced. They emerge because the relationship has become integrated into future thinking. The idea of continuing life without the connection feels less appealing than building a future that includes it. Another important aspect of this shift is the growing willingness to make decisions that take the relationship into account. Future planning is not just about words, it is also reflected in choices and priorities. Time, energy, and opportunities may be considered through the lens of how they affect the connection. This demonstrates a deeper level of commitment because it shows that the relationship is influencing important life decisions rather than remaining separate from them. Trust plays a major role in this process. Looking ahead with another person requires confidence that the connection is worth investing in. It means believing that the relationship has the potential to continue growing and evolving. As trust deepens, thoughts about the future become less intimidating and more exciting. The possibility of shared experiences, mutual growth, and lasting companionship begins to feel natural. Perhaps the strongest indication of authentic love is when future inclusion becomes effortless. There is no need to consciously force the relationship into upcoming plans because it already occupies an important place in the vision of what lies ahead. When someone consistently imagines tomorrow, next year, and beyond with you in mind, it often reflects a connection that has become deeply meaningful and genuinely valued. One of the strongest signs of authentic love is a willingness to work through conflict instead of avoiding it. Every relationship experiences disagreements, misunderstandings, and difficult conversations. These moments are inevitable whenever two people with different perspectives, emotions, and experiences come together. What truly matters is not whether conflict happens, but how it is handled when it does. Genuine love often reveals itself in the decision to stay engaged and protect the connection, even when things become uncomfortable. For many people, conflict can feel threatening. It may trigger fears of rejection, disappointment, or emotional pain. As a result, the instinct may be to withdraw, shut down, or create distance whenever tension appears. Avoiding the issue can seem easier than facing difficult emotions directly. However, when authentic love begins to grow, there is often a noticeable shift. The relationship starts to feel valuable enough to fight for rather than escape from. The focus moves away from avoiding discomfort and toward preserving the bond. This doesn't mean every disagreement is handled perfectly. There may still be moments of frustration, silence, or emotional overwhelm. The difference is that there is a genuine effort to return to the conversation and work toward understanding. Instead of allowing distance to grow indefinitely, there is a desire to resolve problems and restore closeness. That willingness to re-engage is often more meaningful than never having conflict at all. Another important sign is the growing ability to listen during difficult conversations. Rather than viewing disagreements as battles to be won, there is an increasing effort to understand the other person's feelings and perspective. Questions are asked, concerns are acknowledged. Even when opinions differ, there is a desire to find common ground rather than simply proving a point. This approach demonstrates emotional investment because understanding becomes more important than being right. Conflict also becomes an opportunity for growth rather than a reason to pull away. Challenges are viewed as obstacles that can be worked through together instead of evidence that the relationship is failing. This mindset reflects a deeper level of commitment because it recognizes that strong relationships are built through overcoming difficulties, not by avoiding them. The willingness to face problems together creates a stronger foundation of trust and resilience over time. One of the most powerful indicators of authentic love is the effort to repair after tension has occurred. Apologies become more sincere. Accountability becomes more common. There is a desire to heal hurt feelings and rebuild emotional closeness, rather than letting resentment take root. Repairing a connection requires vulnerability, humility, and care, all of which are signs that the relationship holds significant value. Ultimately, choosing to work through conflict demonstrates that the connection matters more than temporary discomfort. It shows a commitment to understanding, growth, and emotional closeness. When someone consistently chooses communication over avoidance and resolution over distance, it often reveals a love that is rooted in genuine care, respect, and a desire to build something lasting despite life's inevitable challenges. One of the most meaningful signs that authentic love is developing is when independence begins to exist alongside emotional connection rather than competing with it. Many people value their personal freedom, their routines, their goals, and the ability to maintain a sense of individuality. There is nothing wrong with this. In fact, healthy independence is an important part of any strong relationship. The difference is that when genuine love grows, closeness no longer feels like a threat to personal freedom. Instead, both can exist together in a balanced and healthy way. At first, emotional intimacy can feel overwhelming for someone who is used to relying primarily on themselves. Spending too much time together, sharing deep feelings, or becoming emotionally dependent on another person may create discomfort. Personal space often feels safe and familiar because it provides control and predictability. However, authentic love gradually changes this perspective. The relationship begins to feel less like an intrusion and more like a valuable source of comfort, support, and companionship. This shift often appears through a greater willingness to share everyday life. Time together becomes something that is genuinely enjoyed, rather than something that feels like an obligation. There is a growing desire to create memories, participate in experiences, and include another person in important moments. The connection becomes a positive part of life instead of something that competes with personal independence. Another important sign is the ability to be emotionally present without feeling trapped. In relationships where emotional closeness feels uncomfortable, there can be a tendency to create distance whenever intimacy increases. But when authentic love develops, emotional connection becomes easier to accept. Conversations become more open, affection feels more natural, vulnerability becomes less intimidating. Instead of constantly needing to retreat whenever emotions deepen, there is a greater comfort with staying engaged and connected. This balance is important because healthy relationships require both individuality and togetherness. Authentic love does not erase personal identity. It does not require sacrificing goals, interests, or independence. Instead, it creates a situation where both people can continue growing as individuals while also building a strong emotional bond. There is enough trust and security for personal space to exist without threatening the relationship. You may also notice a change in priorities. While personal freedom remains important, there is a growing willingness to make room for the relationship. Time is set aside for meaningful conversations. Effort is invested in shared experiences. Emotional needs are considered alongside personal needs. These adjustments happen because the connection has become significant enough to deserve attention and care. Perhaps the clearest sign of all is that closeness begins to feel safe. The fear that emotional intimacy will lead to a loss of independence gradually fades. Instead of viewing connection as something restrictive, it starts to feel enriching. The relationship becomes a source of strength rather than pressure. When independence and emotional intimacy find a healthy balance, it often reveals that genuine love is present, and that the connection has evolved into something deeper, stronger, and far more meaningful than simple attraction. One of the most powerful signs of authentic love is when actions consistently communicate care, concern, and commitment. Words can be meaningful, but actions often reveal the true depth of someone's feelings. Anyone can make promises, express affection, or say the right things in a moment of emotion. What truly matters is whether those feelings are reflected through consistent behavior over time. Genuine love often becomes most visible not through grand declarations, but through the small, thoughtful actions that demonstrate a sincere investment in another person's well-being. These actions are usually subtle rather than dramatic. They may appear in everyday moments that are easy to overlook. There is a growing attentiveness to your needs, your feelings, and the things that matter to you. Details that once seemed insignificant are remembered. Important events are acknowledged. Support is offered during difficult times. These gestures may not attract attention from the outside, but they often carry deep emotional meaning because they show genuine care and consideration. One important aspect of authentic love is the desire to make life easier for the person who matters. This can be seen in practical forms of support, thoughtful acts of kindness, or simply being present when needed most. The motivation behind these actions is not obligation or expectation of reward. Instead, there is a natural desire to contribute to your happiness and comfort. Seeing you succeed, smile, or feel supported becomes personally meaningful. Another significant sign is emotional protectiveness. This does not mean controlling behavior or attempting to manage every aspect of your life. Rather, it reflects a sincere concern for your emotional well-being. There is a desire to avoid causing unnecessary pain, to be mindful of your feelings, and to provide reassurance during moments of uncertainty. When authentic love is present, your emotional experience becomes important because the connection itself has become valuable. Thoughtful actions also reveal a deeper level of attention. Genuine care often involves noticing things that others might miss. Preferences, habits, concerns, and personal challenges are remembered and taken seriously. Effort is made to understand what makes you feel appreciated, respected, and supported. This attentiveness shows that you occupy an important place in someone's thoughts, even when you are not physically together. Consistency makes these actions even more meaningful. Anyone can perform a kind gesture once. Authentic love is reflected when care becomes a pattern rather than an occasional event. Support continues during both good times and difficult moments. Thoughtfulness remains present even when life becomes busy or stressful. The relationship is nurtured through ongoing effort rather than isolated displays of affection. Ultimately, actions speak louder than words because they require intention, time, and emotional investment. They demonstrate that the relationship is not merely appreciated in theory, but actively valued in practice. When someone consistently shows care through thoughtful behavior, emotional support, and genuine concern for your well-being, it often reveals a form of love that is deep, authentic, and rooted in a sincere desire to see the relationship thrive and grow over time.